Essendon been a massive story. There's been a big spotlight on this football club, been horrible over the past fortnight. Brad Scott came in 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to analyse how much progress this football club has made in that time.
It's a great question. I'll go back to 2022. It was Ben Rutten's last year as coach. He was sacked at the end of the year. In 2022, they were almost $3 million under the salary cap. So they paid forward contracts. That created this bit of a vacuum of salary cap space. That's allowed them to really go hard at free agency in the last couple of years. They went after Ben Ainsworth this year. They got 3 players in last year, 3 big names.
So the list is better.
No doubt. So they're spending far more money on players and they're spending far more money off the field. They went from 2.5 development coaches in 2022 under Rutten to 5.5 under Scott in 2023 because they identified that player development was an issue. This year they brought in Dr. Ben Robbins, their mental skills coach, highly regarded, David Rath, who's helped them innovate their training sessions and plan and review them. So they've really beefed up the football department so much and they're spending far more in the salary cap on better players. They've gone, I think if we've got some stats here, in 2022 they were the second youngest team in the AFL. Now they're the 6th oldest. They've got so much more support around the players, so much better coaching.
So expectations are interesting around this.
But the results are similar. I mean, in 2021, Rutten took this team to finals with a percentage of about 110. That's the club's best percentage since 2003. Right now, it's got the 4th worst percentage in the AFL.
Essendon fans at the moment, I think, were distraught with the performance at the weekend. The white flag went up against St Kilda. There's no doubt about that. There was a late fade out against Adelaide. It's blown the great start to the season that Essendon has made, and we've heard a lot from Essendon about the off-field standards. You know, really gone up. They went overseas over the summer, so you know they've done a lot of work to fix the club off the field, and now Essendon fans are becoming impatient about improvement on the field. I think Brad Scott is going to take a massive Bunsen burner and a spotlight to this list over the next 4 weeks because he'll be gaining data. We talk about finals this year. He'll be looking at which players can take the Essendon Football Club to a top 4 berth, a premiership. He's brutal, Brad Scott. He's a straight shooter. So I think these next 4 weeks will make or break careers at the Essendon Football Club. There is no doubt about that. But there is a sense of familiarity, a deja vu about all this. Take a listen to this. You found this grab from 2014, Sammy. This is former coach Bomber Thompson, questioning the club's development in 2014.
When are you going to change? When is it going to happen? Where you take yourself from an average team into a team that consistently plays finals and you can handle the stage and you look the same every week. When? Because they do it in patches. It's not as if I just said to them, it's not as if they can't play.
Now, tell me they could not have been Brad Scott on Saturday after the game against St Kilda. It's extraordinary to listen to. I mean, it's the same odds. And the other interesting part under the Brad Scott era is they've only debuted 3 AFL players. That's the least in the AFL.
That's astonishing.
No, under Brad Scott, which is 2023 and 2024.
2 years they've debuted 3 players. I can't believe that.
Alwyn Davey, who's not in the team at the moment, Elijah Sardis, who's not in the team at the moment, and Nate Cuddy. They're the only 3 players to get a Guernsey under Brad Scott. They've got, right now, I mean, they've got Archie Roberts, whose GPS numbers have been at AFL level for months, but they haven't played him. They haven't given him a go. Ben Hobbs is in the VFL. Sardis is in the VFL. It's a really, really strange position to be in, given we don't think they're going to play finals now.
And the problem is twofold, I think, Sam. They've struggled to put those kids in. They're not playing the kids, as you said, they're not debuting them, but their older players aren't landing up to the standards either. In tomorrow's Herald Sun, we've done a list with Champion Data, grading the best elite players in the competition. That's 47 names on that list. Not one Essendon name is on that list. Every other club has at least one player.
Zach Merritt would have to be an elite player.
Zach Merritt didn't make it in Champion Data's numbers.
That's unbelievable.
That's by the numbers, of course, but they're the only club without a representative in that list, and that's the top 47 players basically in the competition. No Bombers.
I think the list is askew. I think they've got a surplus of midfielders. I think they need more high-pressure forwards. Part of that modern game to improve that defence. I think that's a big issue. The list, I think, does need recalibrating.
Is it an edge that Essendon were talking about earlier in the year, or have they just got to the cliff and tumbled over? They're the big talking point, I think, out of the weekend. We'll get to the Bulldogs and the Hawthorns, but this football club they are a big football club, whether you like it or not. And I've been thinking about this all day. This was them this time last year. We talked about the similarities, and we've all year said, oh, no, but they're better. They're better this year. I think even last week we said we think they're better, and they think they're better, but the numbers suggest that they are very much the same. And so I watched the game on the weekend, and don't worry, Saints fans, you're going to get lots of love. They were absolutely magnificent, but they pounded this side, and they're not better. And the thing is, at various stages throughout this year, there are players and the club as a whole where we've all said, yeah, I think they are. And I think that player's getting there. And I reckon they've done well. And even the recruits, yeah, I think we've all said it. But they don't do it for long enough. I don't think they're in for the grind. I think they're in for the glory. That's the way I've cut it down. I don't think they hang in there long enough. And this season, this 24-week season, challenges you like nothing else. And their respect will come over a 2 and 3 year period, not a 2 or 3 game period. So I've seen Perkins stand up on occasions. I've seen Cox kick 3 goals. I've seen Harrison Jones. They do it for a short period of time, and it looks to me like they go, oh, good. That's enough.
But we saw the pressure a couple of weeks ago against Collingwood. We were there live. So we saw that grittiness for 3 quarters.
On the back of Merritt, who kept them in it early. And so Merritt and McGrath and Durham, the 3 that I looked at in the weekend. And there was a moment, I might be going out of order here, but there was a moment there when they were getting split open. Essendon. Uncontested marks were just ridiculous. I'll show the numbers in a moment. And the ball came down, and Zach Merritt, they gave up another uncontested mark, which ended up in a shot and goal. And Zach Merritt just absolutely balled out Andy McGrath. And as I'm watching this unfold, I'm looking at it and going, you know what? These are the 2 blokes, the captain and the vice-captain, I think. And just watch this unfold. This is not a quick wear, were you? This is at this stage. They gave up 6 uncontested marks in the forward 50 in the first quarter. And these 2 went on with it, Bucks, because they care, right? These 2 are in for the grind. They're not in for the glory. They will try and guts and grind it out. And look at them. This wasn't just a 5-second conversation. This goes on because they are invested in what they want to do. It's no good being good for 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 5 weeks. It is a year-on-year proposition.
That's interesting vision you showed there, Gaz, because we saw the whole team doing that 2 or 3 weeks ago at the MCG. So you say on the week, so that's obviously clearly stood out to you because they're the only 2 guys doing it.
Your point there is exactly what I'm talking about. They can do it for short periods. They can invest for a short period, week in, week out, against the grain like Hawthorn did on the weekend. Turn it around when things aren't going your way? No.
I don't think your comments and your perspective is knee-jerk. Since their bye, they just haven't played well. They haven't played great footy. They haven't put themselves outside of the Collingwood game. I don't think we've seen anywhere near the best of Essendon, and the best in the first half of the year was more than good enough. Like those numbers against St Kilda, the defensive numbers and uncontested marks against, that just doesn't stack up. If I'm Brad Scott, because there's an element of PTSD with what's going on. It's nearly like the players feel this coming on and they can't express themselves. It's like they go into their shell.
From last year, do you think?
Well, I think think about Zach Merritt's experience over his entire career. I think he's been able to, not breeze through it, but he's worked his way through it. I think McGrath's working his way through it. I still think there's young players here. It's nearly like they're used to this happening. When the challenge gets really, tough, it's still like, well, let's fail before someone else beats us. And that's not, you don't want to see that. Brad Scott, I'm going to the lead because this is a locker room issue. The players have to own it. They have to have minimum standards on how they're going to approach next month. It's not necessarily about winning. It's about an attitude and how are you going to go about your footy, because this needs to be put to bed in the next month.
So last week, they got beaten, and then Brad said it was an ugly review and all that sort of stuff. They came out and gave up 18 uncontested marks in the forward half in the first quarter. 6 uncontested marks in the forward 50 in the first quarter, right? Ross Lyon interviewed at quarter time. We wanted to take away their uncontested mark game, okay? There was a bit of an adjustment in the second quarter, and they go in at half time and go, now they'll address this, right? Now they'll say you've got to close up because you can't get pressure on because uncontested mark was 21-2 inside the first 5 minutes of the third quarter.
Third quarter was horrific to watch.
Brownie. But they're not in for the grind, this club. These players aren't in for the grind.
That surprised me. I played with Brad Scott. He's a great teammate. I know him as a man as well. And, he was hard-nosed. You love him in a street fight, in a dark alleyway.
Yep.
So, but it feels like they haven't taken on the persona of the coach.
They haven't, but Brad, we go back, and Brad coached, and you've coached against him, and I'm a Brad. I like the way Brad goes about his footy. And he's taken the North into prelims, and he's had some success. But we talk about the premiership window, top 6 for defence. Every premier in the past 20 years is top 6 for defence. Only once in 11 years have his team's been rated for top 6 against. So does the coach have to look at that? Will he look at that, Bucks, or not?
Absolutely, he would be aware of that.
Well, he's always had a mind to defence, hasn't he?
Well, defence has been potentially, but that would not suggest that. No. I think I don't think he minds the offensive elements, but it needs to be a balance of both. The mantra around Essendon was teaching them how to defend because their transition defence numbers weren't great.